Has it always been that? And they just never yeah, this is what the Constitution says. The Constitution says they can do whatever the fuck they want, really.
It's gonna be Bailey who replaces Crane.
I think that would be really good. I think
it'd be good too.
He has a really good head on his shoulders, and he is enjoyable to debate with. Hey, how you doing, Soze?
Hey, how you doing?
Hey, Mr. Soze.
How the fuck did you sneak here? Like, I literally turned to my right, and you're just there.
Yeah, I don't know. I just walked up here with my soft shoes on, I guess.
Oh shit.
What's up?
Not too much. We're just talking about the news.
Which part? The shooting?
Crane stepping down, retiring.
Yeah, because he got shot, didn't he?
No,
Somebody
he
got
didn't
shot.
get shot. The prosecution got shot, and then he called for a mistrial, and then about 15 minutes later, they put out the state announcement that he retired.
Yeah, I mean, listen. If I just held the trial, I had all the authority in the only two authority jurisdictions to do something, and I didn't have a guard at a secure checkpoint in which take people's firearms and people can't defend themselves, I'd probably retire too and imply it was somebody else's fault. Anyways, so what you guys think's going to happen? Do they vote on something like this, or there's nothing in the Constitution to say they're even a judge? So where do we go from here?
I wonder how, like, if it'll be appointed or who would appoint him.
Well, I believe the judges are the only ones that have the authority, or the council, to do something, so.
It doesn't actually specify. That's something that I was like, had occurred to me earlier today, is it outlines that it purely just says that they make law based on jurisprudence, but it doesn't elaborate.
Well, that's just the general, you know, philosophy and talking of law. So the way I see it is they can pass any legislation they want, and that's sort of the open-endedness to what's said there. But how do you talk the philosophy of law in your government if your constitution is three things, and it's only partially three things? Like, there's DNA, there's searches, but it's only implying searches of property, and the DNA is only on, you know, criminals and whatnot. There's no real substance to discuss, the, you know, in the Constitution. So I'm not sure.
Not wrong.
I mean,
you know, I hate that the search and seizure that they have in the Constitution is only specific to property. I was looking at it yesterday because I was trying to see what it said about searches of, like, your person, and there's just nothing.
I think when they were writing it, they might have been having a seizure. That was the seizure part. I mean, there's, you know, when you break off from a constitution that the federal made or the state body made, usually there's, you know, the freedoms, the rights, the base fundamental of what your law should be built off. But this doesn't have that. So the closest thing we got is the Bill of Privileges, and even that is, you know, just bare.
I was wondering the other day, like, why would you put that there? Why didn't they amend the Constitution, like the right to bear arms and the, you know, all that kind of shit?
That's the that's generally the logic you would do once you know, build the fundamentals. It would go to the Constitution, and the rest would be, I guess, still discussable or something. I don't know. You know, I don't know. Let's look at it. It's been 7 months or something, and there's 4 common laws or something. So can't expect much. There was obviously a bottleneck there for some reason.
2 of which I think were enacted in the last, like, 2 weeks.
Yeah. Yeah. Funnily enough, one of them is to do with property and property lines. They're now implying that fences and whatnot are a way to re-jurisdiction. It's very
Yeah,
interesting.
that was a case law from a civil suit that I represented the respondent, Tito.
Hmm. Very interesting. I just am curious as to why they would make case law on jurisdictions and imply that there are boundaries and it had to be written, but for me, I just got fucked in the ass. Sideways. Crazy how the law works and bends.
So this the Koil case.
Mm-hmm.
This is we were talking about it earlier. This is intended to be a civil case, right?
Yeah, I don't want to do the second appeal since it's a second trial or whatever, just purely because there's already 3 cases that have been done. The chance of finding a judge when there was 3 in each situation, I believe, would be next to 0 because they will claim what the conflict of interest, even though of course it's not written in the due process, they will claim conflict of interest because they don't want to be a part of it or some bullshit.
Understand.
So, if I do this, they can refund the money, maybe, from the bill, and then if I do the appeal after, and it somehow goes through, they would, too, have to refund the bill, I believe, so. The way I get to double dip, maybe.
All right.
It was a $125,000 fucking citation.
Jesus fucking
what do you guys
Christ.
think? Like, does it seem logical to post for a civil case? I mean, I was held in jail for too long, you know, mistrials, fucking, even the last one should have been mistrial. One of the judges didn't show up.
One thing that makes this isn't entire. This is somewhat related to this case, and it's I've been looking over so much documents. I forgot which case I was looking at, but it had to do with how do you today you need to go through Judge Angel, right? Which is great. We now have a special prosecutor. We have a means by which to charge the police department. Had that been the case prior, cases like this, we'd be charging felonies on the offices that went down this route and potentially felony charges on the judges. An example would be the case of, let's say a police officer was to. Oh yes, I remember the case. I had a client that got ran over by EMS. Officers arrived on scene. There was severe negligence. They didn't take his charges seriously. In fact, they stated, despite having plenty of evidence for there being felony hit and run, that they weren't comfortable doing it. And then as a means to not pursue charges, they said, well, maybe your client, we can press charges on him. So as a way to almost like barter or like borderline blackmail the case off this lieutenant. Now, the way that like other states in the United States will go about this is that starts to enter into the realm of felony obstruction of justice.
Right. Well,
the reason I bring that up is like, in a way, this is kind of what transpired to you. Unfortunately, we don't have the mechanisms to do this against the PD. So yeah, the civil case is the most reasonable option.
Well, civil, I believe, also generally doesn't require the same amount of guilt to be proven. But
That is absolutely correct.
the problem being is that would be if we hadn't our own constitution. So our due process isn't anything to do with any upper body that used to be there, whether it's the state or federal constitutions. We can't really rely on anything. From my understanding, the only laws we have is Constitution and the legislation. Nothing else otherwise. So all those rights we have don't really exist unless they say they exist. I mean, do you even see anywhere where it says what sort of guilt you need to be proven guilty? Because as it is right now, technically, I believe a judge could put me in jail and just say I'm guilty. They don't need to have beyond a reasonable doubt or, be 99.9999% sure. There's nothing that even indicates that.
That's a good question.
Well, it's not a good question. It's a stupid question. Because we have to ask what even the form of guilt is in our own goddamn government. And I guarantee if you ask every fucking judge, they will all say something different.
I mean, you would hope that they would say, beyond a reasonable doubt. I mean,
Right.
I think that's the sort of the basis that police officers and judges should operate under, but it does, I guess, become, it shouldn't be a gray area. It just frankly shouldn't, but I can see your argument in that if it's not explicitly stated somewhere, somebody could argue, well, do I need to have, that
This is why the
beyond reasonable
fundamentals
doubt?
are important. A constitution, if it's the law of everybody, needs to be rights and freedoms and what we expect out of a civilization so we can build off it. You can't just, assume things because everybody will assume something different, and it is more reasonable to think you will never get the same decision from multiple people than it is to, get the same decision every time because everybody will interpret it differently because there's no fundamental law. There's just nothing to base it off. I'm not sure why anybody... It's funny to me. Even Bailey was implying that this was like some sort of fucking marvelous thing that they've created here, and I just don't understand what is the marvel. It is confusing.
Wait, what? These laws? What's existing?
Well, listen, don't get me wrong. He knows there's fucking stupid shit in there, okay? But the way that he talked about, Mr. Crane, like he was somehow a fucking genius that made something so great.
No.
Baffles me.
I think it's possible that you got the political end of Bailey.
I got the 5 years ago statement is what I got.
Yeah.
Not the now statement.
I spoke to Justice oh my God, Daniels? No, Gatsby, sorry. Earlier today, and the tone the tone she used while describing the judicial agreement, like there was a discussion that took place amongst the judges, and she was telling me what the outcome of it was. I don't remember the specifics, but the way she said it to me was very much like, I disagreed, but we're always on the same page. So what I'm conveying here is, I think there's kind of a pact they have that when talking about the DOJ towards the public, they have a unified front. I don't know why, but that's the impression I've been getting recently.
Yeah, well, I mean, I don't think it's negative to work as a team, but you're not a team when there's one person at the head in a chokehold. That is not a team environment, especially when there's no way to remove them. But thankfully, somebody got shot and he stood down, so maybe things will change.
You never know. I think to your point, that actually not. Me scratching my head is in the U.S. Constitution. Where does probable cause come into play? Is it inferred through the amendments or what it is? And the reason I draw that question is
It would be based on other things, but yes, it's to do with privacy. The freedom of privacy. Just general freedoms and rights that you have. As a person to be to be safe and secure. It's the basis of everything. Probable cause is also, the whole being reasonable if you were to detain someone to begin with. RS, whatever. Everything is based on that, logic that, but it's all built off a different fundamental freedom, right? That's what the privacy and whatnot, in my opinion, is the core of. But obviously, the common laws and laws elaborate on that based on, what you were saying of how you would deem it reasonable and whatnot, or probable.
So it looks like here, like for might help part of the discussion is looks like in the U.S. Constitution, it's that Fourth Amendment that for the search and seizure, including of persons being based on probable cause. So it looks like a lot of the stuff we see in U.S. laws derived
I hope you're
from
happy,
that.
brother. You
So
spelled
that does make sense,
you spelled
actually.
you are wrong, my
But
friend.
yeah, no. To your point, without that being there, what is the line?
Well, that's exactly right, and that's why I say there needs to be some sort of bill or fundamental aspect to the law that they can build off instead of guessing what the law should be based on what they want to say. You can't. How do you build case law if it's not referring to something so people in the future can use it as an actual precedent? The idea is for it to be a guide with a logical reasoning behind it, so people can understand why it's happening.
Yeah, you're right. I think if there isn't a very clearly understood framework, then anything goes.
Yo, Smalls,
and if anything goes, well,
what
then
debate
so do
RP
charges.
have I had out of
I think
curiosity?
that's what's being faced with right now.
I don't really debate with anybody. We are all sitting here talking about something and agreeing.
Should we take a look at this document wrote up? I thought it was pretty good. I think it hits the points. Obviously, there's some grammatical.
Yeah. I just slapped something together so it was enough that it would be like, okay, there's likely a case here. I guess we'll see it. But at the same time, there is nothing really to say they can't throw it out.
I ask, so when I was reading through this, is part of the negligence that you're arguing that, the legislation and constitution states that the jurisdiction is within Los Santos.
Yes.
The crimes that you were accused of happened outside of Los Santos. So the negligence is that the DOJ charged you for crimes essentially out of their jurisdiction?
No. So the DOJ have the right to charge me for crimes since the penal code is statewide. It's a San Andreas penal code apparently, but they didn't have the right to detain me, or the LEOs didn't have a right to do anything there. There was no legal reason for them to escalate that situation, 1, into the shootout, 2, into what would be the treason, or 3, to claim joyriding, because, with what they've implied, they will agree that there is jurisdictions in private housing. They've even got the Vehicle Act that implies because it's mobile, it has a different type of jurisdiction. So the fact that they have to label all these things that have a boundary and jurisdiction, but for me, even though it said LEOs are currently in Los Santos and the surroundings of that city, apparently that implies now they have Blaine County approval, which is completely wrong. They are the ones that have said to the police that it's okay to do this by justifying what they did to me. If they can't read their own legislation that indicates there's boundaries and jurisdictions, I don't understand what they are going to argue. I mean, it literally says in PCP 2.0 that the PD is Los Santos City.
Yeah. No, I know. I get what you're saying. I think the argument makes sense, but isn't this something that was argued during the court case the sort of the boundaries of their jurisdiction, and how did
Right.
I wasn't there the whole time. Like,
So, okay, this is the worst part of it all right? The judge, when I was screaming at him, implied that because it says the examples of power in which the commissioner or the mayor has, whatever it says in one of those screenshots, they reserve these powers, which would indicate they haven't written them into power, is the ability to move out and have other police departments in other regions of San Andreas across the island. So it indicates and says they have the power to do it, but they haven't done it because it's not written in legislation. So he said he missed the example part and says because they have the power to do this, that means it's done, essentially, which is, you know, probably the fucking most stupid way to set a precedent on anything if that was how it would be, because technically I have the power to be the president of the United States of America. I guess I'm the
but it
president now.
doesn't. Yeah, I see what you're saying. Yeah, I mean, I think that this is what you said on the phone the other day, that if they enacted it, you know, if they wrote the legislation for it,
Right, it'd
then
be
that would be
there.
one thing, but they've yet to do that.
Mm-hmm. So it
It's
says he's an agent of the state, which would imply, sure, you have the power to do this, but that's the same as the other two authorities already. The council and the DOJ already had the same authority. They had the powers to make anything happen. Once it's written, it's law. It's that simple. They made the law. I don't know why it's complicated for them to understand that. If it's not written, it's not a law. But if it is written and says, we are the police department of, Los Santos, and we can spread further out later, that indicates that I was right. They don't have jurisdiction there by their own law that they've okayed. It's just interesting that every other part of jurisdiction would need to be written, like, you know, private properties, fence lines, and all that shit implied, but only Blaine County, as a LEO enforcement area, doesn't need to be written because Soze is a treasonous asshole.
Huh.
I think.
My general.
Oh,
Sorry,
go
go ahead. No,
I was
go
just
ahead.
gonna say, I think, and this is gonna sound a little silly, but
Leave him
because
here. I'd
it
love to
shouldn't
chat with
be
him in a minute.
silly, but this is what we're dealing with. Is we're kind of arguing the letter of the law, and I'm. It's. I mean, we can argue it. I think we can absolutely do it, but will they accept it? I don't know.
Probably not.
I agree with that. That's pretty much exactly what I was going to say. Is like with just this conversation and then kind of like thinking back at everything, I think for the same reasons your case fell flat, I think this will equally. And
Right.
but it's still worthwhile pursuing because it's just another kind of nail in the coffin in the lack of foundation found in the current constitution.
Right.
And maybe
I
that
mean,
just helps
it's kind
highlight
of
the need for its revisit.
I'm
kind
curious,
of
though.
trying to
if-
force their hand to revisit it.
Sure, but at the
Like,
same
I
time,
guess
if they say, I'm going to joyride and get that charge because that's the letter of the law, why would they not use the letter of the law everywhere else? Why does it get to flip-flop and change based on how they want the law to work? That's exactly why everybody will end up hating them. If you change the law with no substance to it, think about this, okay? If I had the right to safety and protection as a civilian in Los Santos, okay? It would be easy for a judge to articulate and say, listen, I understand that you believe you don't have jurisdiction out there because it's, you know, pretty much implied that it doesn't exist, but we as people also have the right to protect each other and, you know, the right to health, the right to safety, the right to whatever the fuck else. And that would also imply that, you know, having police up there would be something that we would logically do. So there'd be an argument for them to say it is reasonable to think that police would work up there. But there's no rights or anything written to indicate we have those rights or freedoms. So how do you argue that case of law if it's not a part of the law as itself? That's the issue. If you create two authorities to create legislative law, that is the law. It doesn't say anything about anything else. Not your interpretation of other laws elsewhere. This is the law. That's the law we have to abide by. So if they go letter of the law with the penal code, that's fair. So be it. But they should do that with every part of legislation, not just the ones they see fit, in my opinion. Especially if it's involved in the same case.
The legislation is the law, you know?
Right.
It needs to be treated as such. If, you know, it's written that it is Los Santos and the boundaries of the city, then anything out of there shouldn't, you know.
They don't have jurisdiction.
Yeah.
So think about this. What did they do to
Or
make
they
DOC
need to-
happen? They had to create the jurisdiction and imply it in legislation that people had control there now. They had to do the same with the private properties. And they had to do the same with the mobile vehicle to distinguish it being different from a private property. They've created all these jurisdictions for everything, even the Los Santos Police Department, but not in Blaine County. But for some reason, I'm the one that's wrong. It doesn't make sense by their own law. How do you argue that when there's 4 different things that create jurisdiction and there's nothing to indicate there's jurisdiction out there for them? I don't know how you would do that. I just don't understand. At least in the civil case, I'm not going to jail for 5 months or whatever it may be, and they will actually have to answer because I'm not going to be screaming at the top of my lungs that they're fucking stupid. Maybe.
Not wrong.
Either way, I mean, that's the way I see it. And like I said, even the first 2 cases, it's not so much about the win or the loss. The end of it is, for me, just my morals and, you know, my view on what they've created for us and how it should be enforced. I don't want to bend at the will of people that have imaginary powers over me. I just don't. It's just not me. It doesn't matter if I'm a cop or not. I'm still going to go with what I think is right based on the Constitution and, you know, what we're delivered.
Yeah, I mean, that's how, you know, all of our government entities function is based on the Constitution. And if, you know, those government entities aren't willing to take the Constitution as the law, you know, word for word, then I'm not sure what they're operating under.
Well, that's why I say the freedoms. If your freedoms are broad, it's very easy to go by quote unquote the word of the law because, like I said, you know, if I have the right to safety, a lot of things are, you know, going to fall under that. Whether it's, you know, having a weapon or whatever, defending myself, moving a vehicle because it's unsafe, just anything can be, you know, I guess built off of that fundamental freedom. So, I don't know. I mean, you know, it is what it is. That's the law. It is the law. It depends which judge you ask. And, you know, that's the reason I'm doing it anyway. I feel like since it's happened, people are seeing the issues and it's just building and building. Not just based on my case, but I mean, look at the council. They've ripped themselves apart. We're at a point where there's shootings in courtrooms. When courts ended, people are getting beaten, and everybody
Jesus. Not
at the
wrong.
top of these are implying that it's everybody else's fault. So I guess it is our fault, but I'll just keep doing what I believe is the law and just see what happens.
And that's the right thing to do. I mean, at the end of the day, right? Like I was telling someone this earlier. Even when it comes down to the citizenry that are unhappy with charges they're getting, yeah, some of those charges may be unjust, but and them getting pressed on them might be unjust. Maybe there's not enough PC, but unless they come to lawyers and use that framework to push back, ain't nothing going to change. It falls on everybody.
But that's the problem. If there's only 4 case laws in 7 months, there was no reaction to the issues that they faced. There's no way these judges only saw 4 holes in however many cases they went through. Absolutely no shot. And that's why I say, you know, if Mr. Crane is willing to post on Twitter that he doesn't want to talk about the philosophies of law while they have jurisprudence to create legislation, I believe he, in fact, is fucking stupid. And that's probably the reason none of this went through. I don't think he even understood his own responsibilities.
I 1000% he didn't.
I mean, yeah, listen, I don't want to sit here and talk about the same shit I've talked about for fucking the last 3 weeks, honestly. But, I mean, if you guys want somebody to push that, or you can get somebody to push it for me, I would appreciate it. If not, it's fine. I can sort something out eventually. No rush on my side, so.
I think this is me and Kit can cook on this. And see what's up.
Sounds good to
Yeah,
me.
we can get something together.
Oh, just another thing. Did you know that there's a weapon law that says if you don't report your gun stolen and somebody uses it, if they shot 500 people, you would then be an accessory to every single charge once they're arrested?
Oh, yes.
Well,
we are
welcome
well
to our
aware.
life.
Right.
That's
We
why,
are well aware of this.
Did you also notice that when it says accessory to any charge in the penal code, they must be proven to have known the crime would happen?
Correct.
Right.
Yep.
There we
It's,
go. I guess that's another hole that I created as a treasonous asshole or something. They don't stop. The more laws I read, the bigger the holes get. Soon it's going to be a black hole, okay? We'll end up getting absorbed by stupidity and explode.